Okay, so I'll just, okay, so I have to send the request for I sent the request for uh, to share the screen. Okay,
And it's recording now if you didn't hear it.
okay.
And we can start. I can just kick it off quickly just to introduce you, Barbara. For everyone on the call, mostly our MIC members, thank you so much for joining. And for our other members that are on that may be local businesses in Verona or just Verona community members, we are so excited to have Barbara here. She has a tremendous amount of experience. We've had a few conversations just on all the amazing work that she does for individuals with disabilities and the businesses that look to hire anyone, focusing on the benefits of inclusive hiring practices and all of the services that she offers to businesses and our individuals with disabilities. So Barbara, I will turn it over to you, but we're so thankful that you're here. So thank you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. And it's my pleasure to be here. My name is Barbara Stockton. I am a program planning development specialist with our business outreach team with the New Jersey Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. I've worked with DVR now for 14 years. I was a counselor in a local office for a long time until 2021 when I was promoted to this opportunity to do the business engagement. And I cover 5 counties. There's 4 of us on the team, and we each have a handful of counties. I cover Middlesex, Somerset, Hunterdon, Essex, and Hudson counties. And so today I'm going to talk a little bit about DVR, overview of what we are. We are a state agency, and we assist individuals with disabilities with employment. We work with individuals in high schools, ages 14 to 21, young adults, as well as any age beyond that, as long as a person wants to work and has a disability. So we have services for youth in high school, and then we have adult services for individuals who age out of high school and are looking for employment. We have what in high school it's called pre-employment transition services. So we assist individuals, students with learning job skills, as well as identifying what their goal is going to be post high school, what career they're going to look into, what skills they need, training, identify training needs, identify if they're going to go to college, assist them with supporting with what college they would go to and the process to get into college and apply and all of that. And also individuals who are out of school looking for employment or training, college, we also assist with that. So we have an office for each county, dedicated for each county. Some offices, like for example, Somerville covers 2 counties, Somerset and Hunterdon, and there's some other offices that share counties that share an office. But you could always access an office in your area. So it would just be a referral to the office, and then a counselor would meet with the individual and start the process. So the person would just need a disability with a documentation of the disability, as well as an impairment to employment. So a barrier that they need assistance with to overcome and to be able to work and accomplish their goal. And then the counselor would do their eligibility, then a vocational plan, and then work with them towards that goal and the services put in place the services needed for that goal to successful employment. So my team, we work with the offices, the local offices, as well as the businesses. We identify the needs of the employer as well as our candidate pool to make a good match for both, for the job seeker and for the employer. So something that we often do is what I have here on this PowerPoint is disability etiquette presentation. So we discuss about working with individuals with disabilities, some common stereotypes, myths. So we break that down so there's no confusion. We talk about some language that may have been used in the past that's no longer used today, appropriate language to use, and some tips for working with individuals with Some common disabilities that sometimes we see. Of course, this isn't all of them. It's just an overview, few of them, some of them that we encounter at DVR and in general. And then I will talk a little bit about the pros of hiring individuals with disabilities, what we can offer as a state agency for the employer, as well as what's out there, as well as the benefits in general of hiring individuals with disabilities. So language in the workplace, so what we say and how we say it can enhance the dignity of those we serve or inadvertently reflect and perpetuate stereotypes and negative attitudes. And we'll talk about the language in the upcoming slides. Disability language and etiquette are about respect, common sense, and common courtesy. Some common words and phrases reinforce prejudices and assumptions. However, the right language can challenge those discriminations and stereotypes. These are some common stereotypes that sometimes we hear, or someone might, when they hear or see about a person with disability, that a person living with disability is courageous, or a person's life is ruined by the disability, or it dominates the person's life. And those aren't true, because some people, their disability is their identity, and some people are born with a disability, and it's the life that they know, and it's the only life that they know. So they're just living their life as they have been for however many years that they've been dealing with uh, the disability. And also sometimes they say, or they might think, well, if a person did something differently, maybe they wouldn't have a disability, but that's also not true. People living with disabilities aren't as smart, capable, interesting, diverse as other people. And again, that's not true. And I can tell you just from working with people with disabilities in my career in DVR and many years prior, that individuals with disabilities are extremely capable, and people with disabilities bring diversity to employment, and that's a great thing. People with disabilities are sick, and that's also not true. Some basic, some basics working with people with disabilities or interacting with individuals with disabilities: ask before you help. Sometimes you may see someone with a disability and think that they need assistance, but maybe they don't. Again, they may have been living with a disability for a long time. They could have been born with a disability and know themselves what's best. Be sensitive about physical contact. Just as anyone else, we need our personal space or personal boundaries. If it looks like maybe a person needs help with something, again, ask them before trying to physically touch them or help them. And back to like the language, to think before you speak, think about how it may be perceived, and not to make assumptions. And I've had that also. Sometimes I've encountered, maybe gone to a job fair or talked about certain individuals or disabilities, and sometimes the assumption is, oh, you work with people with disabilities, and they say, oh, okay, I know what that is, but really they don't. They have an assumption that maybe it might be one specific disability, or maybe they've had someone come through with one specific disability, but um, that's not doesn't mean everyone with a disability has a physical disability, or whatever it is that they might have in their mind. Some communication tips: it's person first language. And so you don't want to say, so in the next slide here, person suffers from, victim, wheelchair boundary, some terms that we don't want to use. We want to use person first language. So let's say an individual with a disability, individual with a hearing loss, and not some of the other terms. And again, people with disabilities, person without a disability, child with autism, accessible hotel room, accessible parking, a person who has a person who's deaf or hard of hearing, a wheelchair user. These are examples of person first language as opposed to the other column. So these are some, again, not representative of all the individuals we work with or disabilities. These are just some uh, examples. So when working with an individual with mobility impairment, you offer to shake their hands, not to lean or touch on their wheelchair or any other device that they might use for mobility or to stabilize themselves. When at a conversation, you want to be at eye level. So if they're sitting down, it would be best to sit down and be at eye level with them. Again, do not touch their assistive devices, crutches, canes, because they use those for balance, and not to move objects around them unexpectedly, because they might have already checked their surroundings and they might be aware of what's around. And then if you move something, it might throw them off. Individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing, just follow the person's cues when communicating. Before speaking to get someone's attention, you could wave your hand in front of them. Individuals who have hearing loss, who are deaf, are very visual people. So they'll notice if your hand is waving in their general direction. Do not shout. You want to speak clearly and distinctly. Sometimes people think if they talk louder that it would help the person to hear, or if they they maybe speak like a slower, like almost like slow motion with their mouth, that it would be easier. But sometimes individuals who rely on looking at the mouth and the face to assist with what they think they heard. Sometimes it's harder if you over exaggerate, over enunciate. They might not be able to follow the mouth movements, and it might be harder for them to hear or to understand. Rephrase rather than repeat. Some individuals with hearing loss, for example, there might be like a higher frequency sound. There are like certain letters are higher frequency, and they might not be able to hear those sounds. So repeating it wouldn't help as much as rephrasing it, because if you rephrase it, then they will be able to piece together some things that they didn't hear and be able to understand. Use facial expressions and body language. It's very visual. Individuals who use American Sign Language as a visual language, and they rely on facial expressions and body language, because oftentimes if they can't hear as well the tone, then they won't know exactly the meaning or the way that's being presented. But the body language and facial expressions help, because body language and facial expressions are huge in individuals who use American Sign Language. It's huge to have the facial expressions. It's actual part of their language. And use brief written notes. So if you do have to write something to them, you want to just write it very brief, because some individuals who use American Sign Language don't use English, written English. Some do. Some know both written English and American Sign Language, but some individuals who use American Sign Language, written English is more challenging for them, because they're two very different languages, have very, very different grammatical structure, and everything's very different. So it might be harder. Like for example, some words we use in English, there's not an American Sign Language sign for it. So they wouldn't know some of the words that you're writing down, because it's not part of the visual language. If a person comes to you and they have an interpreter with them, or someone who's helping them facilitate communication, you want to speak directly to the person, not to their interpreter, not to whoever's there with them. So it's important just to speak to the person directly and not say, tell him this, tell her that, because the person who's interpreting has to interpret that. So they're going to interpret, tell her this, tell him that. So the person's going to feel like you're not talking to them directly, you're talking to someone who's there to help them. Uh, with interpreters, it is simultaneous. So as you're speaking, they, as soon as they're able to get the concept that you're conveying, they're going to start signing that to the person. So it is simultaneous, but you do want to allow some time for pauses, to allow for catch up, for if there's any clarification needed by the interpreter. So you do just want to be aware that they may need a little extra time to convey the communication to the person. Individuals with speech disabilities, you want to give the person your full attention. Repeat for verification. So if there's something that maybe you didn't understand clearly, you might just want to repeat it rather than ask them to keep repeating themselves. You might just want to repeat to verify that you understood what they said. And you can also write down or ask them what's the best way to communicate. Suggest another way to communicate, or they might have another way that they want to communicate. Write it down, or they might use a assistive device, or just text on the phone and show it to the person. And some individuals with hearing loss also do that. Individuals with autism, neurodiverse individuals. So it's important to minimize non-essential sensory input. So if there's something, maybe sounds or lights that are necessary, that could be challenging for an individual with autism. So sometimes also when I visit, sometimes I do visit work sites and get an idea of, observe the employees to see exactly what's expected of a job. So that way I can better convey the job description and find a candidate that meets those needs. So sometimes I do take note of, okay, is it a loud environment? Are there a lot of lights? Are there flashing lights? What's required of the employee to wear as far as tactile things like that, because some individuals could be sensitive to sensory input. So we just want to make sure if it could be minimized, that would be helpful for the person. You want to use clear language. You don't want to leave things for interpretation. So that we know that they understand exactly what's meant. Give precise directions. If a person seems uninterested, it's probably unintentional, and it could just be part of their disability. And I had this individual that I worked with when I was a counselor a long time ago, very well educated. He had a master's degree in, I believe it was mechanical engineering. And every time I met with him, we did like preparing for job interviews. We did different things with him, and it always just seemed like he just didn't want to be there. But I know he did. And sometimes an individual, the hardest part for them, individuals who are neurodiverse, individuals with autism, is that interaction, the interview. So it really takes some understanding. Okay, they don't intend to come across this way. They really are interested, they really want the job. But sometimes that social piece is the hardest part for them to do. So, but they could certainly be capable of doing the job and be complete experts in the field. It's just the getting past that interview sometimes is the hardest part. So, I have even talked to employers and let them know, like, so and so applied, this is what their skills are, this is his resume, this is his education experience and the internship experience he had. He did wonderful, but this is how he presents. But it's totally unintentional. He really wants to be there, and he can really impress you when given the opportunity. And he did secure employment, and he moved on from our services, and he's working and doing well. So it's great to see when they find the right fit and an employer who truly understands. And also any just make sure that the boundaries, any like unspoken, unwritten rules are understood, explained to individuals, because sometimes they might lack those boundaries and it might be harder for them to understand things that aren't clearly written out and explained. Individuals with learning disabilities, we all learn differently. We all have different ways to learn. Some people learn just by going in and doing something. Some of us learn by seeing it. Some of us learn uh, by hearing directions. So you could always just ask them what's the best way for them to get the information, for them to receive information. Just always be patient, flexible, supportive, not to rush them, and repeat directions. Provide directions in writing if that's the best way for them, and give the information gradually and clearly, and be direct in the communication so there's no room or less room to interpret incorrectly. And another service that we offer to some individuals, and some individuals with autism, some individuals with learning disabilities, even individuals with hearing loss, sometimes we do offer them job coaches if that's what they need, or an employment specialist job coach. So sometimes they might have that support on the job where the job coach can help them learn the job more effectively and be an additional training support to the person on the job. Individuals with developmental disabilities, just speak clearly, using simple words and concrete concepts. Sometimes like, for example, on job interviews, if they have someone with them, if they have a job coach with them, they might rephrase the question for the individual, because they work with them weekly usually, and they know exactly how to work with a person. So sometimes they might rephrase or explain it differently so the person can understand. And just be patient, allow them to respond, allow them, sometimes they might need additional time to process what was said and formulate their response. So being patient, understanding of that is appreciated. Individuals with who are blind or visually impaired. At DVR, we have a sister organization called Commission for the Blind and Visually Impaired. So at DVR, if they have a primary diagnosis of visual impairments, usually they wouldn't be working with us, although we do work with individuals with visual impairments, and we also work closely with our sister organization, Commission for the Blind and Visually Impaired. So they also can talk at any time about working with their population. But it's important when working with someone with a visual impairment. Oftentimes, we notice someone first by seeing them. An individual with has a visual impairment, they might rely on hearing the person. So if you identify yourself, they would maybe they can make the connection of who you are. If they needed a guide, you can offer your elbow as opposed to grabbing their arm if they need a sighted guide to maneuver around a workplace or assistance in any area. If you are walking next to someone and they have a guide dog or a mobility cane, you would just want to walk on the opposite side so they can use their guide dog or cane to help them maneuver. You want to give specific non-visual directions. You can use the numbers on like the face of a clock to tell them, like, where they would have to turn or where something is. And if an individual has a service animal, just respect the handler, not distract, feed or pet the animal. So these are some what ifs. If you can't understand a person's speech, if you offer their hands and realize that they can't move theirs, um, that if a person has a wheelchair, look fatigued, they're having a long time to finish a sentence, or you ask a question, they look confused. The first thing to do is you want to relax and just treat the individual as you would treat any other person. And you want to make sure that you give them the time to regroup if they're having a hard time with answering a question or any of the what ifs in the previous slide. You just again treat them as you would anyone else coming to you, and just remember that things you say really make an impact on the person. So just understanding them, giving them the attention, just being very sincere with your language and how you approach them. I always say that things change as far as language and what's appropriate, and what we say now, certain phrases might be acceptable. Down the road, things might change. Language is always changing, but people can really tell, even if you use a word or a phrase that's maybe it was outdated, but they can tell that you really meant well and you really are taking time to understand them. They're really gonna appreciate taking the time. Not to make assumptions about what you think a person can or cannot do based on what you see, or if they how they present. So you really just want to give them the opportunity. Maybe they didn't present well during the interview, but they might really have the qualifications to do the job. Or if someone comes to you and says, oh, I have an individual, they have disabilities, or I work with individuals with disabilities, to understand that people with disabilities can work, and not say, oh, well, what does that mean? I don't know if this is the right place for them. Because those are some things that I've heard when I've worked with, been out to maybe job fairs or events and stuff like that. So we just want to just know that people with disabilities live among us every day. It's a normal part of life for a lot of individuals, and that they really can benefit the workplace. A disability is not always visible, and neither is ability. So some disabilities are visible, but their ability isn't. So if you really get to know the person and you see a disability, but there's also a lot of ability also that you're not seeing. So it's important to know. And it's also important to know that sometimes you can't see a disability, but a person might have some struggles in certain areas, but we can work around that. There's almost always a solution, and that's what we're here for at DVR. We're here to help with those solutions to any issue that might come up with an individual. And I always also tell employers, sometimes you have individuals that you work with right now that have a disability. You just maybe don't know, they didn't identify. And sometimes we have individuals that come to us because they say, oh, my employer suggested I come here. My employer noticed I was having some trouble hearing, and they wanted me to come here and see if there's something that you can do to help. Or they say, oh, this employee, they didn't identify as having a disability. They don't know if they have a disability, but they're having some challenges. Can you help them? And we can talk with the person. If the person says, yeah, I did have some challenges at some point, and they're willing to have an assessment, maybe they need to talk to someone or see someone on their own or through us, we can help them get that documentation so that we can help them and put the supports in place. So some important takeaways is disability is a normal part of life. Many people have experienced a disabling condition at some stage of life. And that's true. Some people are born with disabilities. Some people, there might be an accident or injury that occurs at some point in their life, and now they consider themselves having a disability. Some disabilities come just as we get older, and some things happen and change, and now we consider it being a disability. So it really is a normal part of life. And normalizing it, I think, helps us understand, okay, it could happen to anyone. Um, and also, it's important to know that some people, their disability is their culture and it's part of their identity. So some individuals, like I mentioned earlier, if they are born with something, that's just who they are, and they wouldn't change it for anything. They've adapted very well. Individuals who are deaf, some individuals, that's their culture. They wouldn't want to change it. They wouldn't want to fix it. They don't want to have a procedure or surgery, with a cochlear implant or anything like that to, to regain some hearing. They'd rather use identify with their culture and their language, which is American Sign Language. So it could be insulting to a person who's deaf to give them suggestions as far as, oh, well, maybe you should get hearing aids, maybe you should look into a cochlear implant. That could be very insulting to a person because this is how they identify. This is their culture, their language, how they identify, and they wouldn't change it for anything. So it's important to respect that and understand that part. And this is my contact information and the counties that I cover. But I also wanted to go a little bit, and I can stop sharing. I just wanted to go over a little bit also about some programs, incentives that we have, and also things that are out there and available. So for example, there is something called the Work Opportunity Tax Credit. So if you have an individual on your employee who identifies having disability, there are tax credits involved, and that's something you could just apply for. And also through DVR, we have a service called on the job training. And we pay up to 50% of the gross wages for an individual who we work with, who they have a disability and they have some skills gains to make. And so it could be an individual who maybe they don't have a lot of skills in a specific area, and we pay 50% of the wages for 6 months, and that helps with the training. So just an example of this is in another county that I covered. I had an individual who he was training to be a plumber, and I connected with an employer, a small business in the county, and he offered the person employment, and I assisted him with getting on our vendor system, and then he filled out the form, which is just some areas of where what skills gain the person's gonna make within the 6 months, and then we started issuing vouchers to him to help cover the wages, like reimbursement. So once a person got paid, they would submit their pay stub and the form, and then we would reimburse. So that's a way to assist the employer in helping the person to gain skills. And it could be very valuable because you can have an individual like that person, a young adult, it's fresh out of a training program, and he has some barriers to employment, which we can assist him with. And helps the employer because we're assisting with the wages for that person while he learns, shadows another employee, and um, and we find that individuals with disabilities are very loyal and very thankful and grateful and tend to stay with the employer. So it really is a win for both. Also, we have a newer program. It's called the paid internship. So for 6 to 8 weeks, if a person has an area of skills gain that they need, maybe they don't have a lot of skills yet in the area. It doesn't have to be a student, even though it's an internship. And we pay 100% of the wages, and there's no commitment to hire the person. So if there's maybe an area that they're looking to get into, but they don't have experience, it could be a good way for the person to get experience. And also there you are able to hire them once the program is complete. You are the 6 to 8 weeks is complete, you are able to offer them employment if you found that they were a great asset to your business. Some other advantages hiring individuals with disabilities, it's just there's a large untapped talent pool of individuals with disabilities. Often, sometimes they might say, I've exhausted everything. I just haven't been able to find a job. So then they end up taking, and this could be a person in a very skilled training, education background. So they might then take another position just to get some money, just do something else. I've had individuals say, you know what, I'll just drive for Uber, or I'll do DoorDash. And those are fine jobs, but sometimes these are individuals who have college training, who have certifications, and they just found, maybe because of their disability, that they're having challenge finding employment, and they end up doing something else, or they end up um, maybe applying for disability benefits rather than look for employment. And then there's a talent pool. A person has a high level of talent that was not used by employers. So we always want to look into seeing, can we give opportunities, what is their talent, look beyond the disability, some of the stereotypes, or if there's any concerns, questions. That's what we're here for. Myself, my team, DVR, we're here to help with that. To, if there's any support you need as an employer, we could always offer consultation guidance on how to handle situations or anything that might come up. So it is proven to be better for businesses hiring people with disabilities. I have so many individuals who have stayed so long with jobs, more than the general public, and that's something that we find. I've worked with a lot with individuals who are deaf when I was a counselor, and some of those individuals would be with the company until the company closed. They would be with the job for 40 years, and they would stay with the job because they were just so happy that someone accepted them and offered them the job, and trusted them, and were able to communicate with them and work well with them. So we find that individuals with disabilities are very loyal and stay with the job, and that really helps companies because they're not always dealing with the turnover, hiring new people, and it really does help with to help to run the business. As I mentioned in one of the slides, there's a big myth that maybe they're not as capable, but we've proven that. We know that individuals with disabilities are very capable. We have individuals at DVR with all skill levels. We have individuals who are looking for entry-level jobs, but then we work with individuals who have very high degrees, credentials. Recently, I was working with an individual. He has a physical disability, and he has a pharmacy degree. He's a registered pharmacist, but because of his physical disability, working in a traditional pharmacy setting wouldn't be the best for him. So we had to work with him, and eventually he was able to find a job with a pharmaceutical company, but doing something other than like working, as in a pharmacy where you'd have to be doing a lot of moving around. He was able to work for a pharmaceutical company, use those skills in a different role. So it was great for him to finally obtain that, although he felt there were a lot of barriers because of the physical disability he would present. They would see that. So sometimes he was happy if there was like a Zoom. He said, well, they're not going to see that I have a physical disability. But then he was always concerned, well, what happens when I do meet with them? Now they're going to see that I have a physical disability. And I just always encouraged and supported him. And your knowledge will show them that you could really do the job. But it was just getting the right fit, finding something that didn't require as much experience as some of the positions required, since he was fairly new to the field. Something also, we're here for accommodations to assist with that. So if there's an accommodation that the person needs, sometimes people think that that accommodations are costly, but they're often not, and we assist with that. So that's another benefit, is if there is an accommodation that person needs, we can help consult with that as far as what accommodation might be needed. And if it's not something that could easily be provided or would be costly, we could always look into seeing what we can do to help with that. For example, I had a deaf individual who worked for a township, and he worked as a records clerk, and all he needed was additional like monitor, so he can have a video phone on one screen where he would get phone calls through a video screen, and the other screen for his work. And his employer had an extra monitor. They just hooked it up for him. It didn't cost him anything. And I believe we paid for, I think it was the keyboard and mouse we provided for him, so he was able to have that. So again, there's the talent advantage. There's so many talented individuals who are out there who just um, need the understanding that they can do the job just like anyone else. Um, a lot of individuals who have disabilities are great at problem solving and are very innovative, and they're living in a able-bodied world as a person with a disability. So often individuals with disabilities face challenges every single day in just the general world. Like I always say with individuals with hearing loss or deaf, sometimes they say, well, how am I going to communicate with a person who's deaf? Sometimes people are nervous about that. And I say to them, they're in a hearing world, and the they're used to dealing with hearing people every day. Sometimes people who are deaf, there might be the only one in their family who's deaf, and everyone else is hearing. Every place they go, they're hearing people. So they're used to figuring out how to communicate. So they can always teach and just show how to communicate. And also, even sometimes there might be a barrier to in general, a person who has maybe a mobility impairment, physical disability, accessing some places because of ADA. Maybe there's no ADA compliance as far as the facility. Maybe it's dated prior and they were grandfathered in, and there's no wheelchair access. They're always innovative in figuring out, okay, well, how can I still access services? How can I get someplace? Who can I communicate with? Things like that. So people with disabilities, they live in an able-bodied world every day. They're very good at problem solving and figuring things out, innovative, and those are always good qualities to have in an employee. And again, just being loyal, their loyalty to the employer, and just happy to have the job and tend to stay at the job longer. So we appreciate forward thinking and inclusivity in the workplace. And we are here at DVR anytime to answer any questions. I am always available to do a presentation like this again for anyone who else needs it, or for specific employers, specific situations. That's what we're here for. Are there any questions? If anyone has any questions, I'm here if you want to.
There are two attendees, but if anybody wants to speak, you can raise your hand by pressing the raise hand button on your monitor, just left of the middle, and then I can unmute you.
I think Michelle has a question.
Hi, yes.
Oh,
Hi, Michelle. Sorry about that.
that's okay. Hi, Barbara, I wanted to thank you so much for putting together this presentation. I learned so much from you today, and I also feel like some of the things that I have learned being a part of the township's Multicultural Inclusion and Accessibility Committee, some of those have been reinforced with what you've said, particularly that disability is a normal part of life, person first language. I think those are so important for people to know or to be reminded of. Um, and I was listening to, well, I also appreciated what you were able to share in terms of um, reaching out to businesses and what you're able to offer businesses in terms of the work opportunity tax credit, but even more the on-the-job training. That's just fantastic. And I hope that through MIAC and through the Township of Verona, that we're able to really communicate that with our Chamber of Commerce and reach out to as many Verona businesses as we can, because I think that that's something that we can really work on to make sure that Verona businesses are aware of and that they can reach out to you and take advantage of that offering. I think that's just outstanding. I have a general question. Certain physical disabilities, and I think there's also, through my own experience, invisible disabilities that people don't necessarily see but are happening with a person. And once they start a job they're excited for, a job that they're ready for, that there can be physical fatigue that maybe they weren't expecting within their allotted time of working there. How would you give advice to either the person that is working that perhaps is experiencing unexpected fatigue? Perhaps it's standing longer than they thought, or they're just trying to process so much that their brain is kind of having to work really hard and it just becomes physically exhausting. Or also from the perspective of a business, that they've hired someone, and this is kind of coming up. What advice would you give to the person and or the business?
Right. So everything that we do is very individualized. So the supports the person would need, or you know, what would be best for them is based on their individual needs. So the counselor, or myself, the counselor, all of us could be involved in the conversation and determine if it's going to be substantial, where it's affecting their being able to do the job. Maybe it's not the right job, or is there some way that maybe they just work less hours, maybe it's too many hours for the person, or if they could take a break, adjust their break, so maybe not additional breaks, but adjust their break, so that it would fit with their performance better. There's different things that could be done, but the person would have to disclose. So sometimes that comes up too, where maybe the person didn't disclose at first when they first got the job, but now they're having challenges on the job. So we work with them on disclosing that to the employer, or if they disclose from up front, we will work on them with that. So we would work with the employer and the individual to see what could be done, because that's happened at certain jobs that tend to be very physical, or maybe it was too much lifting. Like there was a warehouse where I had an individual where they thought they could do it, but then realizing that the lifting was way too much, so they were able to accommodate them somewhat with the lifting, or moving them to an area where it's not as physical, things like that. It really depends on the workplace, on what accommodations could be made. So that's why it's helpful knowing, at the specific time, what exactly is expected of the person, what are their essential functions of the job, and the work environment. So those are all things that we work to take into consideration and make sure it's the right fit for the person. Did I answer everything in the question, or?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I didn't know if you could
Okay.
still hear me. Thank you so much. I do appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh, sure.
This was really great. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. My pleasure. Thank you all for being here. And also, if there's anyone that watches it, if there's any questions, they could reach out to me directly, and I can go over any questions, or if anyone needs like an individual presentation for their company or anything, I could always do that at any time, in person, virtual, whatever is preferred.
Barbara, thank you. Just a quick question. And I'll echo Ms. Giuseppe and Michelle. This was phenomenal. So helpful. All the tips that you gave. I mean, I love that you outlined out like the benefits of an inclusive work environment, which are substantial. I think it's also a powerful message of acceptance, that the community can give, right? So just a huge thank you. I just wanted to ask one quick question just regarding businesses. If they're looking to hire, is that something that they can reach out to you as well with?
Yes, yes, absolutely. Often I talk with business about what jobs they have to offer, and then I can take the jobs and share them with the local offices where the candidate pool is, and the counselors in local offices can look through their caseloads and identify candidates that would be a good fit, and then they could apply. I could be in touch with the employer. We work out the best way to communicate that, because we'd like to have a single point of contact. So I would be the single point of contact and work on following up on the application. Sometimes applications, especially in the digital world, sometimes they just get lost in the shuffle, and the person wants to follow up on their application. So it's always good to have a single point of contact with the business to follow up, to ask, was it received, if there's any feedback, even after the person interviews, if there was any feedback, we're open to that as well, so that they can improve going forward.
Awesome. Thank you. And we're going to be, as we mentioned, recording this, so it will be available for all our businesses. Anyone else with your contact information? So if I don't know if there's any other questions. If not, we just want to extend a huge thank you to you, for everything, and we look forward to working with you.
Yes, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure. And I look forward to working with everyone. And any questions at any time, just feel free to reach out to me, email or phone, however you prefer. And I can work with you, and again, do any presentations or discuss any jobs that you may have and share that with our talent pool.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you.
Bye, Michelle. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.